Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga-Texas construction update video.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Giga-Texas. It's Wednesday, the 28th of June. A lot of activity today. We actually take a long flight way up to the north, and I show you a little known ranch that is part of Giga-Texas. And I was just checking on some of the activity because I had heard that there might be some. But as you can see, it's not really a whole lot going on, but this will give you a chance to see the far north. Also, as a personal milestone for me, as you can see here, I've now traveled more than 6,130 miles. I added another 20 miles today on my flights over Giga-Texas. You can also see it's well over 2,100 flights and way over 500 hours of flying. So it's kind of neat to just imagine how much my drones have been flying over Giga-Texas in the last almost 3 years. Now I've got a lot to show you. It's a pretty long video, so I'm going to make a abbreviated intro here. But make sure you watch through the video. We have a lot to talk about and a lot to see. As always, thank you very much for your support. I do appreciate it. So let's get into the video.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga-Texas. As you can see, it's another beautiful morning here at Giga-Texas, and there is a lot to see today. So get ready for some pretty fast-paced discussion. We'll first start off here at the end of line section with these two tents. There are a few Model Ys around, not too many coming out of that opening with that ramp. But it is early in the morning. Big news here at the west main entrance. In addition to all of the plywood put onto the ground here to protect this entryway, we can see that some of the stainless steel cladding has already been installed. The beam closest to the glass windows has the front and back plates put on. They don't have the top plates yet, but the next series of columns and beams has got the mounting brackets being put on the top. So progress here, and hopefully maybe by the end of next week or so, most of the cladding will be installed and we'll get a good view of how this west main entrance will look with all of that shiny stainless steel on all of these beams and columns. So let's get ready to continue to progress towards the south. And let's check on some additional updates. Before we go down too far to the south, just next to these trees, this trailer has more of that stainless steel cladding that has just been delivered. And hopefully we'll see a lot more of that being delivered very soon. Now as we proceed to the south, I'm going to cross over the highway here, or the middle road, and show you this material staging location. Has got a lot more materials in it, a lot of crates, some of them been broken down. We see these large red kind of frames, one of them here on this particular crate. These might be related to the production line of the Cybertruck, and it might be specific to have the bodies on those as they go through that fitting out process in General Assembly. The small or the temporary platform here for loading, not a lot of activity today, but we do see a major change here next to this water cistern or water well, whatever you might want to call it. But first of all, on the bottom of the screen, we can see what looks to be variations of trench boxes, which help protect them from the crews from the ground kind of collapsing. But these are very interesting on the shapes, especially the ones on the left. So I don't know, something I'll be watching to see if we can tell where they use it. Also, we can see with this excavator, they've been breaking through the side of this well or cistern, as you can tell. And it looks like they are doing some modifications at the below grade level. So that's another interesting change that I didn't really expect, but we'll get a chance to see what they do to modify that particular system. As we look across the site, a lot of activity up near the building and in the middle, a lot more of the contractor vehicles, and we'll get some closer looks a little later in the video. But first, I want to start here on the south end as we go over those rebar cages for the continuous flight pier system. There's been more asphalt being put into this kind of intersection area, and also along the length now of this new river road that's being built just to the south of the Cybertruck. We also see a lot more materials on the right-hand side of the screen. Some of them have already been moved in, and all of the solar panels, it looks like, have been now picked up and moved, possibly onto the roof section. We also see some more earthwork here near this southeast corner, and then where these rebar cages are being built, the square ones for the footings and the cylindrical ones for the piers. I did see some workers there earlier today, so it's possible we're seeing more of those being built, which is great because those will be in future footings. On the east side of stamping, you see more items have been delivered, more unpacking of crates, some larger items in that white plastic wrap, and then more of the platform components in that white near that section as well. I think most of that's going to be moved into stamping too. As I turn back, this is a really good view with great lighting of what the south end looks like. The CFA auger cranes and the drill still sitting here idle on the left-hand side, but the big news is this opening now is having the steel columns removed, and you can see those being laid out on the ground here. In addition to that, several of the beams are being removed and stacked on the left-hand side. Now the crane is active, so I'm watching for that, but I'm also going to give you a good view inside of how this looks. Now it looks like there's a scaffolding that's been erected here on the south end, probably to allow for more of the construction that's going to be happening in here. And as I zoom in, this gives you a good view of the workers removing some of those beams on that kind of a walkway almost there. And those beams are being removed by the crane and set onto the left-hand side of the screen. You can also see a pretty good look inside the entire section. As I bring the drone up, I'm doing this, one, because the crane's moving, and two, I want to give you a view of what's going on here at the roof section. Now, we've seen the roof decking removed where they're taking those columns down, but also all of these vents. You see two white ones, two of the black ones. You see some at the top of the screen. These are all the new vents that we've seen the crew taking off the weatherproof membrane, cutting the rectangular holes into the roof, removing the decking, and then they've been putting these vents in. So it looks like most of that's done. Here's another good view of this roof section that has been removed and where they're getting ready to take these columns down. And also on the ground, you can see where they're being stacked. And unfortunately, the sun is really in a tough angle here, but I'll just give you a quick view from this vantage point of how this looks and a lot of the activity that is going on in this particular location for right now. So let me pull away and I'll give you a higher altitude view of this entire south end and how it looks today, and also how that south end of the structure looks with that large section having the wall panels removed. And then later in the video, I will show you where those wall panels are being stored. Bringing the drone down lower, I want to give you this intersection view. Looks like most of the gravel has been spread. They're doing the trenching around the perimeter. Also, you can see the medians of the roadway being prepared as well. So this will be a two-lane road that moves up to the north, and then this section here next to the trenching with some of the pipes that have been installed, and also it looks like some form work. This will be where it connects over to where the multi-level parking garage will be constructed. Another great view of how the entire south end looks with some really nice lighting. And then along this roadway, you can see trenching going across, most likely for conduit. There's the good view of the white wrapped items and the white painted platform items here on the east side that we talked about at the lower altitude. And as I continue to fly to the north, I'm trying to give you a good view here with a zoom in of some of the activity in and around the stamping and the south part of the body in white today. And also, there's several of these white Model Ys here. Some of them are entering into that one large opening. I'm not sure, but it just may be some employees using those vehicles to do work around the site. I don't think those are new cars for customers. This site here has all the gravel. Now more trailers are being installed here, and it'll be something I'll monitor to see what they're going to be doing there. On the new car testing and calibration lot, you can see those white Model Ys driving on the test track. These have got rumble strips and other items that they drive the car over to test to make sure everything is working properly. And you can see even more of them queued up on the left and then driving through this particular test track. You can also see a lot of the Model Ys here in white, some red and black, all lined up on this side, and more vehicles waiting for movement from this lot over to that new car staging and transportation lot, which is very busy today, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Continuing to the southeast, I wanted to show you this new recycling location and also some materials being stored here. We see wooden crates, also wooden pallets, some other boxes with a lot of items here, and some of the trailers with the ramps as they move some of that recycled material off-site. And the east warehouse on wheels looks reasonably full today, but I think a lot of those trailers are over on the west side of the highway now. As I continue to fly to the sort of the east side, this gives you a good idea of how the workshops, the trailers for the construction teams look, this large mound of dirt, and also this is where some of those panels that I mentioned from the south end are being stored. You can tell that some of them have that white stain on them already. So this is one of two locations that we'll see that have some of these panels being stored, most likely to be reused once the extension of that south end is completed. As we fly over the kitchen on the bottom right, we get to the east side of the battery cathode plant, where there is a lot of activity going on, specifically with this new foundation that they are building here on the east side, near where the water detention pond is and that berm. Now with this close-in view, what I'm trying to show you is the south end underground vault that's being constructed. You see how that concrete has been poured, more rebar, and then in the middle of the screen we can see the forms for what looks to be pretty tall walls, at least 10 feet or about 3 meters tall, and you can tell by looking at the construction workers for that sense of scale. And I'll try to continue to maneuver the drone around to give you a good view of how this entire foundation and structure is looking right now. I do not know what this is going to be at this time. I have not been able to find out, and I haven't seen a permit for it, but it's a fairly large structure, kind of long and skinny. And then on this side we can see formwork for more of that perimeter grade beam. We see some trench work going under that beam for most likely conduit. And then this end of the building, you can see how it tapers down to a much smaller section. Looks like there's some excavation in that middle area as well. And this is another really good view of the work that's being done. That yellow membrane is a moisture barrier, which they'll put on the ground before they put the rebar in, and that'll help protect that before they get the concrete poured. So as we continue to look towards the plant and turn the drone to the north, this gives you a good view of how this east side looks today with a lot of the activity, the materials, and some of the trailers and the containers. But also here, just to the south of the cell test lab, we see underground corrugated steel pipe being installed. You can see a trench box there protecting the workers as they do that installation, and more of these pipes to the north, and I've also saw more of them being delivered to the site today as well, coming in on trucks. And it looks like this entire north side is going to be tied in with a water management system, most likely for rain water management, and then it will be directed into that water detention pond that runs the length of this east side. There's still more work being done on that cell test lab corner of the roof as well. And then I'm going to pull away just to give you a good view of how the materials look today at this site. The stainless steel tanks still remain here waiting to be installed, a lot of the materials and workshops, and it looks like there's a pumping operation. You can see the water coming out into this lake, and they're pumping it from over on that west side where you see all of that water kind of standing. On the north end of the building, we see the glass has been installed on the east, north, and west sides, except for those small corners. We see this new trenching operation going underway next to one of the receiving doors. And this is a good view of how this looks today. It looks like there may be some conduit that is installed into that particular section. This is also a good vantage point to see those windows on that north and the west side, and all of them done pretty much to this point except for the corner that you can see there. Now I'm trying to give you a good view of this west side and the trench work for some of that piping, and also you can see where they're stockpiling some of these steel corrugated pipes. Now I'm going to take a diversion here, and I want to fly from this point way up to the north of the site, and I want to give you a view of the old ranch house. I had heard some rumors that there was some activity up in that section, so I thought I would take this opportunity and take a look. Now as we fly over all of this materials that are being stored up on this large rectangular site, just want to remind you that this is permitted for construction at some point in the future as the North Logistics Lot, and also has a warehouse listed into that permit. And as we continue to fly even further to the north, you'll see this clump of trees and these houses around here. This is an old ranch house that has been on this site for quite some time. It was purchased by Tesla from the owners. And this good view in gives you an idea of how this looks right now. I don't believe there's anybody living in it right now. I think it's abandoned. However, I have heard rumors about trucks and activity over here. So I wanted to fly all the way up here and check and see if maybe there was some demolition work going on or some other preparatory work. And as you can see, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on in this particular section. But as we look back towards the main factory, this gives you a good idea of just how far away. We're about 2 miles, or that's approximately, I guess, 4 to 5 kilometers away from the main factory at this location. And we're still well within Tesla's property. Here's a different view of this large rectangular location that has all of the materials being stockpiled. And also this area has had soil test cores done for testing the strength of this location. And what that tells me is that they're probably doing all of the design work for that future construction right now, as having the strength of the soil is one of the necessary things that they need to do to be able to decide on what that construction is going to entail. So hopefully we'll see this at some point, maybe later this year when work begins. But as we continue to fly back towards the battery cathode plant and complex, as a reminder, these kind of north-south linear hills and ponds is from the old sand and gravel mine that used to be in this location before Tesla purchased it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that brief diversion up to the far north. So looking back here on the west side of the die shop and the battery cathode plant, this is a good view of the work that's going on for some of the trench work going right down the middle of this section. You can see some of that smaller trench box where they're putting the pipe in, and also that concrete manhole cover. And also, for some reason, there's quite a bit of water here, and that's what is being pumped out onto that northern lake. As we approach the die shop northwest corner, I wanted to give you a good view of the concrete work that's going on here. It looks like it has been poured. You can see those gantry rails, the gantry crane rails that go inside and are part of this. And as mentioned, this is to be used to be able to take the very large equipment, possibly dies, who knows, for that large equipment in that reinforced foundation just inside that door, and be able to swap it out or bring new items as well. As we get closer to the chiller plant, I wanted to give you some good views of continued activity. Most of it's up on the roof on the south side with a lot of that plumbing, some of the tanks, some of the pumps, and a bunch of other items that they are very busy on getting this all set up. We can also see next to the vaporizers for the nitrogen section, of the plant, we can tell the ground slab has now been poured with concrete. And I'll try to reposition the drone, come up a little bit higher in altitude so you can see how this looks. Now, I've had one viewer suggest that this might be for the trucks that will bring the nitrogen in, and that makes a lot of sense since the fill ports are on that part of the nitrogen tanks that have been installed. So as we continue to fly to the south here, between these two trees, it looks like there's a road being prepared right in the middle, and then there's some trenching that's finishing up some of the electrical conduit in that section. The new clearing on the north end of the staging lot continues to have the grade work completed. As you can tell, they're still putting in dirt and smoothing it around, and also working their way up to that old house. The material staging yard here is as busy as always, with quite a bit of items in crates and green and white plastic covered items. Also, next to this house, you can tell not only have the trees on the left-hand side been removed and moved to a different location, but they're now getting ready to move another tree. And here is that one you can see with that kind of a ring around the base. They're starting to put the poles underneath it, and then they'll put some inflatable bags, and then they'll be able to move the trees. And then here next to that transport truck was where those trees were located. As we get near Tesla Road here, what I'm trying to show you is right in the middle of the bottom of the screen, you see those two concrete vaults. That's conduit, and it'll continue up through the middle of the screen to where you see the conduits being installed here, and two more of those concrete vaults. And then the conduit is extending up to the north on those two trenches. And eventually this is going to connect into that large vault that's being constructed on the south end. And we'll take a look at it more in depth and see what type of activity is going on up here today. And there's quite a bit of activity with some concrete has been poured, more of the forms for the walls now on the south side. So it looks like about half of the structure's walls have been completed. You can see where all the other rebar is waiting for those forms to be removed once the concrete's poured, and then they'll work their way down to the side. See that the crane is very busy with more rebar being brought up to the workers to prepare for that concrete to pour, and that northern wall has the concrete already poured. And I'm going to bring the drone up to a different altitude so you can get a good view of overall how this section looks today, and then also how the Megapack site with some of the road work and some of the grade work and also some of the work here on the main site is progressing. Now, from this kind of bird's eye view, this is a great way to take a look at the number of the transformers, the conduit trenches in between to be able to connect the Megapacks once they do arrive, and the concrete pads that have been placed, and then others getting ready to be placed along this entire section. And with that vantage point, it really gives you a good idea of how this is going to look once it's completed. The north part here with the steel assembly is really continuing to progress. It looks like they've been assembling more of the steel parts, particularly next to the two tall poles here on the north end. And quite a bit more conduit is stored on the west side, so it gives you an idea of how much more conduit needs to be installed in this section. As I bring the drone down lower, you can also see that cable tray where a lot of the workers are right now. And then this is a great low-level view of the activity here at the Megapack site. And I'm hoping that this gives you a really good idea of not only the progress that's being done, but how this is going to look once it's completed. We also see another transformer has just arrived on that large truck, and the crews are getting the crane and the hoist all connected to that transformer and getting ready to move it onto the site. I would say right now about 50% of the transformers have arrived and have been at least placed onto these concrete panels, and it's just great to see how quickly this progress is going. And as I mentioned, the trenches in the middle here, where you can see with the gravel, that's going to be where the conduit goes to connect the actual Megapacks. And I will expect to see the Megapacks installed right down the center. And as I mentioned before, there will be 68 overall Megapacks grouped into sections of 8 or 10. and then ultimately there will be 8 groups that will be connected on the north end. As I continue to fly at this low altitude, this gives you a good view of how this southern part of the site is wrapping up as they are filling in the trenches and those transformers have been installed. Also the material staging yard and the trailers and how this looks as well. And then I'm going to turn back and give you a good view looking from the south to the north of the entire Megapack site and how it looks today. So great to see all of this progress. As I fly up over the power lines and away from this site, you can see some more work that's being done, some of that big trench in the middle underneath the power lines, and also the work here for the HDPE pipe being installed right to the north of Tesla Road. But as we turn back towards the factory, you can see where all of the new castings are being stored on that north parking lot now, at least a lot of them. There's still a large number also being stored here on the east side of the casting machine structure. And as we continue to fly along this widened berm, what I'm trying to show you here is how the crews are preparing with some of the conduit, some of the trenching, and the removal of the concrete here. This is where the conduit will make a 90-degree turn and then go into the building and tie into the existing conduit right now. Also, we can see here next to those stairs, looks like conduit is being installed over towards where the transformers, or at least the electrical boxes, are for this supercharger installation. So all that is being tied in, and that's why they're doing that concrete work. As I continue to fly to the south, you can see how that roundabout looks now with all of the gravel and all of the landscaping, and of course the testing and calibration lot with the solar panel covered superchargers. Next to the east main entrance, you can see some of those planters, a lot more of these castings. The concrete section still in front of those receiving doors has not been poured. And of course, where we've been seeing the widened berm here and all of the conduit that's being installed all along this entire section. So I'm going to bring the drone down a little lower, minding the power lines on the right, to give you an idea of how this conduit installation is progressing from those concrete vaults on the right along this section of the berm and also the widened section. And then also some of the crates on the left, the wooden crates, and more of the castings and the rack mounts on this side. As we get closer to this main junction, you can see more of the concrete with the red covering, indicating that there's conduit has been placed, and it looks like they're wrapping up most of this particular installation right now. And of course, the conduit from this point extends all the way up to the north by the Megapack site and to the new electrical switch yard. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'll point it out again. These trailers are relatively new. It looks like they just put some staircases and also a ramp. So it looks like that's going to be there for some time. Also here next to these two doors, this is the plastic manufacturing. You can see those racks with what are part of the manufacturing of the plastic bumpers for the Model Y. There's just some forms that are out on those racks waiting for use at some point in the future. Now, as we continue to go around this corner, interestingly enough, there's some steel beams on the ground, and also you can tell how the white stain has been pretty much completed now on this angled corner, and they're getting ready to start on the north end. So great to see that progress, and just amazing how much activity has been going on here today. And it's just 2 days until the end of the quarter, so hopefully we'll see some really great results for production and deliveries for Tesla. As always, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great week. Take care.